Welcome to week 2 of the Quilt Along. This week we are going to be cutting triangles, and I'll be cutting them with a traditional ruler. Then we'll show Jennifer cutting them with a specialty ruler, and there is a bit of a difference, so watch the one that's appropriate. And then we'll each show our layout for our quilt. Hi, this is Trish. I'm going to show you how to cut the triangles using a traditional ruler. I have the Creative Grids 8.5 by 12.5 inch ruler here. I really like the Creative Grids ruler because it has these little anti-slip dots and a little border around it. So when you lay it on your fabric, it's easy to move, but as soon as you're ready to cut and put any pressure on it, it stays in place. So I'm cutting the wall hanging size today. I've already trimmed off my salvages. And for the first triangle, we're just going to we need to cut the ends off, and we're going to move in about an inch or so. And these will be our filler pieces for the rows. And we need to flip this around. And find your 60-degree line. Line it up against what we just cut. So the 60-degree line is against that cut edge, and the edge of the ruler is hitting that point. And then we'll rotate it so the 60-degree line is across the bottom edge, and the cut edge hits that point up there. So we're all lined up with this line and that point. So you're just going to flip-flop back and forth until you're all the way to the end. And then at this point you have this awkward size, and you can just open it up, press that, and then make one more cut by just lining your ruler up on one side and cutting across. So we would get, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 triangles plus 2 ends out of each piece.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. Today I'm going to be using the Creative Grids 60-degree triangle ruler to cut my triangles for my Tinsel Tree quilt. If you're going to be using this ruler, you need to remember it has a blunt tip, so you need to remember to cut your strips 1/4 inch narrower than what is called for in the pattern. So lay out your strip. This is folded in half, and I start cutting on the selvage side. So lay out your ruler, line it up with the blunt tip and your measurement down there. Over on this side, you need to leave about an inch, at least an inch, on that side, and we will use these, when we cut this off, these will be used for the ends of the rows. So I've got it all laid out. I'm making my first cut. and I'm saving that. So then I turn it around and I can continue making my other cuts. You just keep doing the ruler back and forth, line it up, and make your cut. And there's your triangle with the blunt tip. So you just turn your ruler again, and cut. Turn your ruler, not your fabric, which I always want to do, and make the cut. So for this size, you can get 7 triangles out of it. For the last one, you need to open that up. I just press that real quick and line it up, and I would make that last cut to get the 7. And that's how you do it for using the Creative Grids ruler.
I'm going to lay out my Tinsel Tree quilt. I have all of my triangles cut, and I've got my half triangles cut for the ends. And the important thing for me to keep in mind is to always make sure the straight of grain is either at the bottom of the triangle or at the top of the triangle, because when I sew these together, I want to get rid of the bias first and keep the straight of grain as I'm sewing the rows together. The other important thing to keep in mind is your tree, what color your tree is going to be, and if you have any blocks or any triangles that are going to blend with the tree, you want to kind of keep them away from the tree area, and you definitely want to keep them away from the tree topper area. So we'll get started. So here's the completed layout. Once you're done with this, you want to step back, consider where your tree is going to be, which is in this area here, and think about what color your tree fabric is. Mine's a very dark green, and you don't want anything that's going to be too blendy in there. So I just might go back and switch out some of these darker blues for something a little lighter. That. Move that over. So take that into consideration. Around the tree, it's not too big of a deal because it's big enough. But in your topper, which is right above the point of your tree, so right in here, you really want to make sure these are high contrast. So I tried to make sure everything was pretty light in that region since I have a very dark green. And I make sure none of the navies are in that topper because then it gets really hard to see the topper. So once you have your layout complete, you're going to start sewing the triangles together, which we'll talk about in another video. But basically you're going to sew your triangles into rows to construct each of the sections in the pattern. You're going to leave these 3 rows unconstructed until we work on the topper. And as you row, you put the triangles together into rows for each section and then sew your rows together. And again, we'll talk about that further. So now we're going to watch Jennifer lay out her quilt.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I am going to show you today how to do the throw quilt layout on your design wall. If you don't have a design wall, that's okay. Just lay them out on the floor, on your bed. But if you have a cat, good luck with that.
So that's week 2. So get your triangles cut, get your layout done. Hopefully you have a design wall or a catless bed. And then next week we'll talk about sewing them together. And we have 2 different ways of sewing them together, because of course I have one way and Jennifer has another way and you probably have a third way. So we'll see you next week.